I'm 5 years sober, and I probably started drinking for the first time when I was as young as 14. Monday nights, 4 or 5 in the morning, still partying or whatever. 3, 4 times a week, I think at its peak. Exploration of life and experimentation and all this kind of stuff. To be clear, this isn't a segment about judgment, and this isn't a segment about beating my own chest or proselytizing or being all prophetic with people and look at me and, you are not something. We all are a thing, and we're all in different places of our journey as it relates to our relationship with ourselves and our world and those around us and similar. So just to be clear, no matter where you're at in your life watching this video, that I pass no judgment upon you. And, for a long time I passed judgment upon myself as it related to my patterns and behaviors and things I was doing in and with my life. And as I did that, I recognized how tough it felt and how heavy it felt and how hard I was actually still being on myself, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. Reflecting on and considering a number of these patterns that, are imbued in this kind of lifestyle, the lifestyle of addiction or the lifestyle of substance use or similar. And nowadays, I would suggest that this is a pattern that is deeply infused into our culture, particularly in the West, where it is just common social interlinking that the way people connect is over a beer or is at a bar or has something to do with that entire world environment. And, that's up to you. That's really the most important thing, is that it's up to you what you choose for yourself in your life. But let me suggest to you some of the ways that I realized those patterns held control over me, and equally the ways that I live my life at the mercy of them, I guess, really is the best way to say that. Firstly, the biggest thing that I recognized and realized as it pertained to sobriety and living a sober lifestyle was that I was suppressing things that I felt by just getting drunk or whatever, right? And that didn't solve any of the things that I was suppressing. It just pushed them over. So I would suppress with liquor, and then I would have a brutal headache and vibe and feeling the next day. And then I would feel good again, but these things would come up. So then when I was good again, I'd go back to the other side of going and partying and drinking and what have you. And that cycle would repeat itself. And for me, that cycle repeated for years and years and years, because that was the lifestyle I thought we live in. That was the world I thought I am. And it got to a place where I recognized that it isn't me, and that it didn't feel healthy, and that it was hurting my body, that I was regularly exhausted, quite down in many respects from these experiences. And so I started to do the work, because I hit those moments where I thought, that's enough of feeling that way. And this is what it's really about. If you're happy and you legitimately feel good in your life, and you go out and you have a glass of wine with dinner or some friends and you're social, it's your journey in that respect. It's not mine. I come from a philosophy that believes it is not my place to project into your world the choices for yourself that you make in your world, insofar as that those choices don't hurt other people, right? So go have a drink, but don't get behind the seat of your car and drive home. Otherwise, I think we have a problem, and we can all agree, right? So to each your own. But for me, I recognize how that made me feel. And for me in my journey, I consciously chose to say no to that wasn't good enough for me anymore, that I needed to do something different. And so I started on that journey. And at first it was tough. You have a full circle of friends that are used to a certain experience with you. So you're disrupting other people's predictable rhythm or routine in their world because you're shifting your pattern. And this doesn't matter any pattern that we shift for ourselves. It doesn't matter anything we do in our lives to make adjustments. That's going to impact those around us. So I go from a guy who's buying tequila shots for everybody within a line of sight and, leading the party, to a guy who is just, content to be in the space and not needing to be the guy hanging from the chandelier. And that shifts people's expectation of how to connect with me, how to engage, how to communicate, what our, common interests are, and all this sort of stuff. And not only that, it serves as a mirror back, as a challenge to others about how they're living their lives. So you can get very like, oh, I don't drink, and snobby about it and stuff. And you can actually really disrupt friendships and relationships as a function of that if you take that journey that way, because it does disrupt the way they're thinking about themselves. It can bring up shame and guilt and resentment and envy and all these kind of like darker brewing emotions, which honestly are what we're suppressing when we're getting intoxicated, right? This is my general premise on the whole, without getting, too off topic and focusing on that, or real, the real exploration of the why, just that is, or it was for me, which I recognized. So for me, I got to the place where I said, that's enough. I feel like shit, right? I've got a brutal hangover. They're starting to last like 2 days of the shot. I'm feeling anxious and anxiety from the liquor being in my system. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I don't feel settled. I feel toxic. The body has a beautiful, magical way of giving us all kinds of warning signs and signals about its lack of interest in continuing to support unhealthy patterns. And as a general rule in our life, I would suggest that we need to listen to those, because those are our intuitive guides to who we are and what we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to live our lives, how we're supposed to look after ourselves. And we choose that consciously or not, to listen to it or not, or just drown it out with another beer. I did this for a heck of a long time. So I stopped, and I've since been on this journey of transforming my life. I've been on this journey of allowing good vibes in. I've always been an upbeat, positive spirit. I've always been searching for the light in my life. I've always had a flame lit in my being that no matter how dark my world seemed to get, that I could still hang on to the hope of who I am. But many struggle with that, right? And we can drown ourselves in that liquor and that lack of, confidence, or that sense of despair of the world coming in on us and whatnot. And we use that as a solution for us to avoid facing it and making adjustments, tough decisions or tough days. Oh, what a tough day I had, I need a drink, right? These associations that suggest to us that is the way to respond to what we're experiencing. But our work is to find healthy ways to respond into what we're experiencing, to move through them. So when we take responsibility for our lives, as opposed to this victim perspective and philosophy of our lives, the victim perspective of saying, oh, all this world is coming at me, I am victim to it, woe is me, fuck the world, get me another beer, right? I mean, that's the thing, is the weight and the heaviness and the hanging over the bar and the drinking this thing with any, no fucking clue, we'll say, about how to resolve it, and the feeling that your answers are just in the bottom of that bottle, right? And among other substances. I mean, this exists. There are many people that go through it. And, as have I, right? But even just considering the philosophy that I am the creator and responsible for my experience, and that everything that I experience comes through me is a suggestion I make for those that are seeking and considering to explore a sober lifestyle, to see how just considering even that perspective, that suggestion, can change their whole world and the way they look at it. So then we look at ourselves and we say, wow, look how I'm treating myself. So we get into, some self-love and some personal forgiveness and some actual healthy eating and some exercise and some nice walks and hikes outdoors. And we kind of we let that in. We stop victimizing ourselves, saying we don't deserve to feel good, and we don't have money, we're not supposed to have money, or I carry all this shame from something that happened when I was a child, or getting really deep in a past life, or the energy that's carried through from our families, energetic linkages or memorized into our DNA that we're not even responsible for, these familial patterns that come with us. We release these things, right? And we say, me and I, myself, in this moment, permit myself to feel good. I permit myself to feel great. So what are those things that make me feel great? And on my list was not a hangover, was not needing all these different substances to experience life. I'm high on life. There's so much going on as you open up in this respect. It's a lot as it is. It's not overwhelming, because you develop the tools as you do this work mindfully, right? Good food, exercise, meditation, good circle of friends, creative hobbies, endeavors that are different than just going to a bar and having a drink, right? You're saving more money. There's all kinds of stuff that come from it. And each of these little pieces infuse together, right, to help create a new lifestyle that's a sober, healthy lifestyle. And every day you feel better doing it. And every day it gets easier, right? But we're the only ones who can do it for ourselves. So no matter where you're at watching this, right, you're loved, you're supported, you're appreciated, and you have the full scope of opportunity ahead of you in your world and your life, no matter where you've come from to right where you are now, to be everything and anything you want going forward. I mean, you have to do it, but you have to stop expecting surely other people to do it for you. That's the victim pattern, right? Entitlement. I'm supposed to have all this stuff. The world owes me all these things. The world doesn't owe you anything. You don't have a divine right to all these things. They are here for you though, if you seek them. But if you don't, and in that great victim, inner child stomping your feet, right? Gimme, 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 and, fuck the world because you haven't. Temper tantrum, which is prevalent and happens often and is, common stuff. In that, you can swallow everything in that. Your whole life could be swallowed in that story. Just consider the other perspective. Now, there's addictive patterns, there's all kinds of other things we're talking about as it relates to sober living and to moving through addictions and similar. I'm not going to get into the deep, biological philosophy of this, but I'm going to suggest that you have the mental and physical ability, and spiritual as well, whatever your faith or denomination, to move through whatever challenges you face and these low vibrating states you're experiencing into embracing high vibrating states that are possible and waiting for you. And they're not waiting for you in some far off land. It starts now. You ask yourself right in this moment, what feels good to me? What feels great? And you start heading down that path. And you'll know what doesn't, because nothing that is good for you will make you feel bad. It's just a very common, easy philosophy to consider. And it's true. So start there and you start building up, like Lego, the building blocks of all these things that feel good. And that is what creates this castle of your life that is strong and stands the test of time and is fantastic in society and has great relationships and a thriving world, a beautiful family, and this nice healthy vibe. Otherwise, it's a really dark path, and tons of people are on it. and they don't necessarily have the tools or means or methods to get out. I was just at a big festival gathering, we'll say, and there's so many people there that were high and, using all these different things. And since I've developed my own strength of center and my own being, my own groundedness in my own perspectives and resolves and taking ownership of my own life and all of this, I stood and held space in that environment, and many people came up to me while they were high, or as they were getting high, or once they came down from being high. I mean, it was a massive event. And let's just pause for a sec. Let's not kid ourselves, right? I mean, drugs and substances are prevalent everywhere, right? Marijuana, cannabis has recently been legalized in Canada and elsewhere. And it's like this, oh, today's the big day, it's been legalized. But the reality is I could have bought a joint since I was 14 in a phone call, right? It's been everywhere since as far as I can remember. And that was, not to date myself really, but roughly 25 years ago. You know what I mean? It's been around, it's on the street. Everybody can get whatever they want anytime, whether you've actually formally legalized it or not. This war on drugs hasn't really been playing out the way it's intended. A lot of money is moving around, but the reality is everything's everywhere. And pretty much everybody has access to anything they want, irrespective of whether people, on the news or in government or what have you, who, I don't know where some of these people generally, with all due respect, come from, because they tend to talk like they don't live in the same world that so many of us witness. It's prevalent is like the sunrise. So what do we do about that, right? We need to actually recognize that's the case, and we need to take ownership ourselves for our experience with and in it, to make choices that are the best for ourselves and our family and those around us and similar. So as I say that, I'm at this event and people are coming up to me and they're in these states, and it blew my mind that people did not even recognize or understand or have any idea how to even participate in the social event sober. I was an anomaly, which is fair enough. I mean, I'm used to that in some respects, right? But the truth is, they're like, you're sober. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, how do you do that? And I was like, what do you mean? And there was no judgment. I was just dumbfounded by how many people didn't even think that they could come to witness and participate in such a spectacular event without fully participating in all the substances that were also kind of intermingled in it. It wasn't an event about substances, but the substances were present there as much as they are, I'm suggesting, anywhere else in our society. But if we want to be high performers, if we want to live our best lives, if we want to really manifest and attract everything we seek for ourselves in our lives, we have to allow ourselves to radiate. We have to allow ourselves to vibrate in our greatest state of being and health, positive energy and similar. We have to let it in. And that path, by and large, right, I will, excuse some caveats and some, particular circumstances where these are being used in positive ways and maybe touch on, but generally speaking, that whole realm encourages and stimulates a real negative vibrating after effect of the use. So you come down, and you don't just come down, you crash off a cliff, right? Energetically and emotionally and physically. So people drop into major states of depression after, and they're in tears, and they're emotional, and their hormones are up and down, and their emotional states are all over the place. And what are the consequences of those things? I mean, they're fatigued, they're tired, so they get irritated, they get angry, they lash out at people. It's anger, it's all of that, right? I'm not interested in it. So I'm out and I'm social, and people can have social drinks and I'm around and whatever. But when people start really zombieing it out and overdoing it, tipping the scale, I'm out. Because I'm actually not gonna have a conversation or try and rationalize with somebody in that state. But the next day when they call me and they feel like shit because they're hungover and they're disappointed, feeling guilty or shameful because they overdid it, and they say, we all have so many times, oh, I'm never gonna have a drink again. That's the last time I'm ever gonna drink. And then you go back and you have another drink again. I'm there to receive the phone call, but help them start shifting, their lives and their lives that way. So how do we do it, right? Find the magic in your life. Find the thing that makes you feel the greatest, most holistic sense of joy, right? Physically and exercise, eating great food. We're energy, so we put good energy in, which is good food with nutrients and all this magic and abundance. It's in our being. We radiate, we vibrate higher, so great food. Go and be social, right? But find alternative things to drink. There's something called ginger beer out there. It's full of cane sugar and whatnot, a generally natural source. There's a whole nother discussion to be made about sugar and whatnot. But, find alternative beverages to have in the same space. You'll find that just sipping even on a soda water with a wedge of lime, which I do often, gives you the same kind of effect of just like having a sipping drink. In between your sips, which you're still having a conversation and being social with people, the after effect of which, though, is not you're going to have a blistering hangover the next day and be completely unproductive, not being able to talk to anybody, and with your head under a hoodie, and your head down because, you're exhausted and wiped out and burnt. So we have to recognize these couple things. We have to recognize that we're the source of our experience. So it's up to us, nobody else, to make these choices for us. If you don't feel good doing what you're doing, whatever it is that you're using or being a part of, whatever, there is a sober life that awaits you. There are tools and resources to help support you in that journey, but it's yours to take the steps. I can't do it for you, others can't do it for you. If you feel like shit, you're the only one who can do something about it. One step at a time, you'll start to feel better, and you'll start to connect with others who also feel better along the same path. That's how this works. It's a big journey. It takes courage, it takes strength, it just takes conviction, but it's yours, it's mine, it has been mine. I'm not, again, being all prophetic about it, but I'm doing it. I have zero interest in getting high. I have zero. I am high on the natural vibration of life and the stuff I feel and see and I'm aware for and connect with in people, and the synchronicity and the spontaneity and the magic, just by my taking a step one at a time along my path that naturally emerges because I'm open to receiving it, is reward enough for me and continues to propel me along this, lifestyle and along this path. So it's here for you. We want to touch on it, and I want to touch on it because it's important. I'm rooting for those of you that are doing the work. It's a path we start. We move from darkness into the light. This is the alchemy. This is the transformation of who we are into what we can ultimately be, which is the best version possible of ourselves in every given moment of our journey. That's what we're striving for. Never ultimately really achieved, but always closer to, as we always get better at everything we do. And that's what's possible. And with that comes so much magic and so much opportunity and so much peace, love, joy, and happiness, and adventure and fulfillment. Man, that's a whole nother 10 videos to tell you about that, right? So have the courage. Let me know what you think about this video, if it resonates with you, if you're on the path, if you're doing the work. Like, comment, and share below if you're feeling me. Let me know what you think. Check out my resources. You might also feel that my website at chadmick.com has a lot of great stuff for you to help continue to support you along this path. I hold a light up for people like you with the courage to do it, like I have, and I do for myself, really. I get up every day and I light my own torch, and we do the work, and we walk the steps, right? So here we are. Chad McMillan, appreciate your time. Thanks for finding us, and we'll talk to you soon.